Hello, Terry Caliendo here again with Dedicated Managers, and I just want to show some cool functionality I just added to the user interface, the UI. I added the ability to shrink these lists because what's going to happen is, I'm going to have a bunch of these lists on the side, and if you start to get a lot of kids, it's going to be, this column over here on the right might drag down pretty far. So I made the ability for it to shrink up and then show that there's something hidden. It was weird if I shrank it up and nothing was there, because then it could be in that state and you might miss that there's kids. So I did the ability to show the kids or hide it and show that there's 3 hidden to shrink it down. That way if you start to add a bunch of children, so if we get to the point where there's lots of kids, this list really starts to drag down, and then we lose some of this stuff, and if this list gets long, the next one will be hidden, so that way you can shrink it up and see the other stuff. Right now it's not stored, the state is not stored, so if I leave and come back, it goes back to being expanded, and the difference would be if I wanted to keep that functionality, keep it where it is, then I would have to use global variables in Vuex as opposed to local variables, which I'm doing right now. And I may end up doing that. But just wanted to show that. Thought that was pretty cool to make the user interface a little more compact if it needed to be for the person using it. And so now I'll go into the code and kind of show you what it took. It really didn't take much to make that happen. And that's, again, why you use a framework like Veutify. So Veutify does a lot of the work for me. So I'm going to look at the latest commit where I added the functionality to the others in household. I'm showing the kinship children here. I should probably add a few for others in household so that I can show it more, keep consistency. So the same thing happens here when I shrink and expand these. It's just I added this to the last one, and it's most clear to see what's going on. So, so if we go into the Git repository here, and I'll look at the most recent changes to show what happened. So what I had before, I had vcard toolbar before, and now I've got vcard toolbar, so it's the same thing. They just got changed. I added a class expandable list so that I needed to add some classes down at the bottom. Actually, that change doesn't show up here. I'll show it in the actual code. So this is that same file, but at the bottom, I had to add some styling at the bottom, and I didn't want this generic vToolbar, which affects the that's this component here. That's the class for that entire component, the toolbar component. I didn't want it to affect all the toolbars like this one. Ultimately I might end up wanting them all to, but I want to fine-grained control at this point. I don't want this one to have the functionality yet. So see how I'm hovering and it's turning to a finger, that's CSS functionality that I don't want here because there's nothing to shrink or expand. So let's go back to the diff file. That's just that right there, which allows me to make my changes local as far as CSS goes, local to this this card. So then the toolbar, I created this AtClick function that basically when you click it, it turns the visibility from one state to the opposite state. It sets it equal to its opposite of itself, right? That's what the equal sign does. So when you click it, this is a true/false variable. It flips from true to false based on the click. So that's down in my my properties section. I can show that again. We're going to say same file, different interface. It's in my in the data section here. So here's the 2 variables here. Here's the new one, menu visibility. So that's this again. It's the same file. If I go back up, here's the expanded customizable list that we're looking at in the diff file. So here's the difference view again. So there's that function, and what that does is that's going to toggle the visibility of this stuff down here. So by clicking that, I'm changing a variable that this stuff is dependent on. So if I, back in the diff file, we'll see that others in household stuff, that visibility thing show up in other places and that's going to decide which group to show, and I'll show that in a second. Then there's the toolbar title. This is, let's see, let me take a break here and figure it out. Yeah, so this, all I did was add here, right? I mean, it's the same from here to here, everything's the same. I added this V spacer, and then the button and the button icon is based on the visibility, whether it's an up arrow or a down arrow. So expand more or expand less is just the arrows. So that's controlling this. When the visible is one state, the up arrow is one way, and when it's another state, the arrow is downward. So and then here's that space between the two, which comes from that V spacer. So that's Veutify, just making things easy for me not having to use various Flexbox things to make that happen. It just does it for me. Actually, let me get back into the diff file. So that was the toolbar. And then the card title, let's see, the V card title. Oh, I just removed that because it was causing extra spacing, extra padding, so I didn't need that. I just got rid of that. And then my list, my V list functionality, you can see the difference is I had the for loop on the collection. So this is the list, this collection, actually this collection is a computed function that goes and gets this list, this list here of all the different children within the entity. That's that computed function. So if I go into the other file here and we look for others in household, it's just returning the store entity others in household, which is, I can actually show it in the down here. It's returning this list here, these two objects. It's returning this object, which are these two things for me to loop through. And so that's what I was doing before. That hasn't really changed, but I've just taken that loop and I've moved it to a different place. So here's where the loop was. The loop was at the list level, and I ended up moving it to the individual tile level, because that's really what I'm repeating is the individual tile. So it's the same functionality, here. I think that was it. Yeah, V4 others in household, and I've moved it to the list tile V4 others in household. So I'm just looping over the tile with the object instead of the list, which is actually, so I'm just repeating this over and over and over, this segment. I'm repeating this segment for each child. So you can see there's a person and then the name, and that's what this is, the person icon and then the name. So that's what's, whoops, I didn't mean to click that. That's what's getting looped over and over and redisplaying. I keep going back to the wrong thing. So that got moved down, and then, so this line here changed to this line, and the only reason it changed is because that, that V4 was added to it. So I moved the V4 from here to this line, so now this line looks like this, and this line looks like this. And then I added a group in the middle. And what that does, the group around the tiles, remember the tiles are what I'm repeating, so I just have one group object around it. And that's what's going to control, that group gives me the control of the slide up. So it looks, when you click on it, and it looks nice how it slides and expands and it slides to shrink. That's what that group functionality does for me. That group gives me that, that sliding functionality. And then it's the V model of that, whether or not it's shown or hidden, is controlled by the visibility, which again is controlled by that click up at the top. So the toolbar, when the toolbar is clicked, I change the visibility on the group, and that tells it whether or not to slide up or slide down. So here it's changing to one state and it's sliding down. And then I'm clicking on the toolbar and it's changing that group to slide up. Now, why does this other one show up? Well, I've got the, darn it, I keep going back to the same thing. That same functionality, but in reverse, is happening here. So while this one, the list is being shown when visibility is true, this one's being shown when visibility is false. It's the opposite. So I had to use the colon value here, which controls the visibility as opposed to the functionality of the visibility. I think I could have used value up here. But you can't have an exclamation point, apparently. I was getting errors if I had vModel here and I had it like this. But basically, the value determines whether or not this list group is shown, same as the vModel does. The vModel just attaches it to, oh, you know what that did? That attached it so that the chevron within itself would change with this change, but that I don't have that functionality anymore. So I'm pretty sure that could be value here too. Anyway, they're opposite. One is shown, the other one is not shown. So while the other one's shrinking, the other one's expanding. And then this one just does a calculation on that others in household object to show how many of them there are. And so, so when there's the calculation to show that there's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6. So when I shrink it, this one appears, and it does a calculation of how many there are, and it says that they're hidden. And then I also have apparently functionality that if you click on it, here's the click functionality, that if I click on it, I also change that visibility variable to switch it to the opposite state. And that's what that exclamation point does. So so there, there it's expanding, the other one's hiding, and this one's expanding, and the other one's hiding. So just a quick little explanation of something I thought was pretty cool. A little UI slickness, and something a little more interesting to learn from. So Terry Caliendo, Dedicated Managers. Again, if you have any comments or questions, if you like what you saw, you didn't like what you saw, please leave a comment, shoot me an email, whatever. Take care. Have a great day. Happy coding.